I'm going to talk about the consultation process, and then I'll have a few words about the evaluation panel. It all starts, it's very important to get this starting point. In October 2006, the Cabinet took this crucial decision that they took two decisions. They were going to have a river centre, and they were going to build it by enabling development. And they also rejected the inspector's decision that had been made previously that the site should be predominantly public open space. Almost everything I'm going to say in the next few minutes is actually taken from official council papers. I'm not making this up. And as far as I know, there was no public consultation about this particular decision. There have been 3 public consultations. The first one was, as Morris had just mentioned, at the RFU in October and November 2007. 500 people were invited. They were sent invitations. I'm not sure how they were selected, but they were invited. And 160 attended in 15 groups. As Morris said, they sat around at tables. I wasn't there. This is what I've heard. And what is called feedback was given. There was no actual voting on pieces of paper for people to count. There were 5 very similar schemes, all, as again Morris has said, thank you very much for that, was involving a great deal of housing. But one of the things that did come out from that, and was published in official council papers, is there were certain priorities established. And there were 3 that I'd like to draw our attention to particularly. There were no parking on the embankment, one-way circulation of traffic, and they would have houses rather than flats. Those were the priorities set. The next consultation number 2, was at York House in February 2008, which was open to everybody, and what was called the preferred option was shown. 329 questionnaires were completed, and I'd just like to point out that more than 80% of the people that completed those questionnaires came from postcodes TW1 or TW2. There was no specific box for a no housing vote. The crucial question, in my mind, there were a lot of questions. I think there were 9 questions in the questionnaire. The first one was the crucial one. The question was, are the priorities for the site suitable? And 40% said they were, and 41% no. And a no vote, in this context, was interpreted as favouring no housing. And 40%, to me, is a majority no vote. This preferred option became what was published in the development brief in May 2008. As you'll see from what I've just said, the York House consultation ignored the public vote, and anyone that knows anything about what the actual layout was will see that they actually ignored those 3 priorities that were set at the RFU. Now, I'm not surprised at the fact they ignored the public vote, because later we find, in May 2008, we find what they say. This is an actual quote from the document. 2 fundamental decisions have already been made on the future use of the site. I've mentioned what those were at the first slide. And it was not the intention to review these or in any way reopen the considerable debate that took place during their establishment. Now, remember, the vote was in February, and we're told this in May. It wasn't on the voting papers. In other words, they were never going to take any notice of what you say. But they didn't tell you that at the time, which I don't think is particularly honest. Right, going on to the third consultation, which was quite recent. People will probably remember that in the Civic Centre in March 2009, 3 shortlisted schemes were shown. 837 questionnaires were completed, so there was more attention paid. But again, more than 80% of those people were living in postcodes TW1 and TW2. Again, there was no specific box for no housing, but nevertheless, between 52 and 57%, and I'm going by the analysis made by a firm called Urban Practitioners, whom I haven't been allowed to talk to, although I wanted to discuss with them, 52 to 57% wrote that in. Again, I think that is a majority for no housing. And those who did vote for the schemes favoured the Quad Elmer scheme over the Countryside scheme, and the third scheme scored very poorly. And despite this, this consultation, the evaluation panel and the Cabinet selected the countryside scheme, which came in number 3 after no housing and the quad illness scheme. So let's move on now to talking about this. The Civic Centre consultation, like the previous one, ignored the public vote. Again, I'm not surprised in retrospect, because if you look, bearing in mind the vote was taken in February, and bearing in mind that we were told, can I have the last point here, please, Scott? Bearing in mind we were told on that paper, the Council will use the results of this questionnaire to inform their decision on the selected bidder. It was fairly reasonable to assume that they were going to take some notice of it. But in the report to Cabinet, April 2009, 2 months after the exhibition, we were told it was not the intention to open a debate or invite comments on the merits or appropriateness of the current strategy. In other words, again, they were never going to take any notice of what you and I said. So that sums up the consultation. They didn't take any notice. They always knew they weren't going to take any notice, but they didn't tell us that they were not going to take notice. An evaluation panel was set up to assess the schemes in April 2009. There were 14 evaluation criteria, and you'll be interested to know that one of these was not, what does the public think? It's all there, it's all written down, I can show you chapter and verse. The panel made no effort to relate assessment to the results of the public consultation, and in fact this document is classified and we can't see it because it's confidential. Transparency, I may add, is one of the important points that the Council stresses they operate on. We have tried very hard to find out who was actually on this evaluation panel. In fact, I mean, this is difficult to believe, but it's true. Different questions have resulted in 7 different versions of the people that were on this panel. We haven't been allowed to see any minutes. We've got no data when the meeting was happening. There must be some explanation. There was a specific panel that met. We've had 7 different versions, and again, I can show you what these 7 different ones are, if you like, at a later date. So, where does this take us now? Well, we're doing business with Countryside, which, as you've been told, is out of time for submitting their accounts, and there's money from the bank that had to borrow a huge amount of money to avoid going bust. The maximum number of housing units, it's minimum cost to build, the maximum profit of development. Despite the priorities set, road and parking along the Riverside, there's the open space question. The Riverside is going to be heavily subsidised. The linked developments that are essential, the affordable housing is very unpopular, and a lot of money has been sunk in promoting a scheme that nobody seems to want. So I'll just end up by saying, we heard all this before, very similar with the ice cream.